I stood on the deck of the ship, the wind in my hair and the smell of salt in the air. It was August 1587, and we had finally arrived at Roanoke Colony, the site of our new home in the New World. As I looked over the horizon, I felt a sense of excitement and anticipation. This was a new land, filled with promise and potential, and I was eager to explore it. I made my way to the small wooden hut that served as our settlement's infirmary. Inside, I found my daughter, Eleanor, lying on a bed of straw, her face contorted with pain. "Father," she gasped, clutching at her swollen belly. "The baby is coming." I took a deep breath and tried to calm myself. I had delivered babies before, but never in such primitive conditions. The room was small and cramped. The only light came from a small window, which barely let enough light to see. As I helped Eleanor through her labor, I couldn't help but think of my granddaughter, who would be the first English child born in the New World. I knew that this was a momentous occasion, one that would be remembered for generations to come. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the baby was born. She was small and fragile, with wispy blonde hair and bright blue eyes. "What will you name her?" I asked, handing the newborn to Eleanor. "Virginia," she said, smiling down at her daughter, "after the Queen." I looked at the baby, who was now sleeping peacefully in her mother's arms. She was a symbol of hope, a reminder that even in this new and uncertain land, life continued. I had to leave to retrieve some supplies. I had only been away for a few months, but when I returned to Roanoke Colony, I found that everything had changed. The settlement was empty, its buildings abandoned and in disrepair. There were no signs of life, no sounds of laughter or conversation. It was as if the entire colony had simply vanished into thin air. I searched the entire settlement, calling out for my granddaughter Virginia and the other colonists, but there was no response. I looked for any clues as to what had happened, but all I could find were scattered belongings and broken tools. The only hint of the colonists' fate was a single word carved into a tree: Croatoan. I gathered the remaining settlers, who were just as bewildered and frightened as I was. We tried to make sense of the situation, but no one had any answers. Where had the colonists gone? Why had they left without a trace? And what did Croatoan mean? As we continued to search for months for any sign of the missing colonists, we scoured the surrounding area, asking nearby tribes for information, but no one knew what had happened to the English settlers. I still remember the day my brother Owen vanished from our home in Shepton Mallet, England, like it was yesterday. It was a bright summer day, and the sun was shining down on our little cottage, casting a golden light over everything. Owen, who was paralyzed and couldn't walk, was sitting on our front porch, watching the fields across the road. I was inside preparing some tea when I heard a strange noise outside. I rushed to the door only to find that Owen was gone, vanished. It was like he had never been there at all. I searched high and low, calling out his name, but there was no response. Even the farm workers in the field across the road had no idea what had happened. My heart was pounding as I searched the area for any clues. I felt like I was in a nightmare, unable to wake up. I couldn't believe that my brother, who couldn't walk, had disappeared into thin air. The porch, where Owen had been sitting, was a simple wooden structure with a slanted roof and wooden walls. The porch overlooked the fields, which stretched out as far as the eye could see, filled with swaying crops of wheat and barley. The air was thick with the scent of hay, and the sound of birds singing was the only noise that filled my ears. I walked down to the fields, hoping to find any sign of my brother, but there was nothing. My brother was gone, and I had no idea where he was or what had happened to him. The floor of our dorm room was cold beneath my bare feet as I watched Paula lace up her sneakers. She wore a red sweater and jeans, her long brown hair pulled back in a ponytail. The bunk beds seemed to glow in the afternoon sunlight streaming in through the window. "Going for a walk?" I asked, sitting up on my bed and rubbing my eyes. Paula nodded, grabbing her coat from the closet. "Yeah, I need to clear my head. You want to come?" I shook my head. Nah, I think I'll take a nap. Alright, I won't be gone long, she said with a smile. See you later. With that, she left the room and I heard the door click shut behind her. I settled back into my pillow, already drifting off to sleep. Hours later, I woke up to the sound of the door opening again. I rubbed my eyes, squinting at the figure in the doorway. It was one of the campus security officers. Excuse me, miss. Have you seen your roommate, Paula Weldon? My heart began to pound as I sat up. No, I haven't. Why? What's happened? She was reported missing a few hours ago. Her father is on his way here to help with the search. We need to know if you saw or heard anything unusual today. I shook my head, my mind racing. I couldn't believe it. Paula gone, without a trace. It didn't make sense. Some pointed fingers at her father, who had initially been a suspect in the case, but he was quickly cleared of any wrongdoings and left town, brokenhearted and desperate to find his daughter. Others whispered about a strange man who had been seen lurking around campus on the day Paula disappeared. He was described as tall and thin, with a scruffy beard and wild eyes, but despite the efforts of the police, he was never identified. And then there was the local Bennington man, who had bragged to his friends that he knew where Paula's body was buried. He was a rough-looking character with a shady past, and many believed he was involved in her disappearance. The sun was beating down on us as we set off on our hike, eager to explore the rugged beauty of the Bitterroot Mountains. Barbara, my hiking companion, was a physically fit and experienced hiker who has always stepped up for any challenge. Her short cropped hair and weathered skin hinted at a life spent exploring the outdoors. I admired her adventurous spirit and looked forward to the hike we had planned together. We trekked through the lush forest, the leaves rustling under our feet. The air was fresh and fragrant with the scent of pine and wildflowers. As we ascended higher, the scenery opened up to breathtaking views of the valley below. I stopped to catch my breath and turned to take in the panorama. The vibrant landscape stretched out as far as the eye could see. Barbara joined me, and we shared a smile as we marveled at the beauty around us. We continued on our hike, chatting and joking as we went. I was grateful for Barbara's company, and her energy was infectious. We reached a rocky outcropping and decided to take a break. Barbara rummaged through her backpack and produced some snacks, which we shared as we soaked in the sun and the stunning views. After a few minutes, I decided to take one last look at the vista before heading back down. Barbara declined, saying she wanted to take a moment to enjoy the peace and quiet. I didn't think much of it and began to take my way down the trail. It was only when I reached the bottom that I realized Barbara was nowhere to be seen. Panic began to set in as I called out her name, but there was no answer. I retraced my steps and searched frantically for any sign of her, but she had vanished without a trace. My heart pounding, I realized that something terrible had happened. I alerted the authorities and we began an intensive search, but Barbara was nowhere to be found. The once beautiful scenery now felt ominous and foreboding, as if it were hiding some terrible secret.